LinkedIn professional. Welcome to today's Hangout. We will be talking today to Sue Allison. She's a independent LinkedIn professional and the founder of Newcomers Network. Hi, Sue. How are you?
Good, thanks, Sam. And you?
I'm good, thanks. How's work with LinkedIn lately? I think there's a lot of changes happening in LinkedIn with new mobile apps and even new ways to search for jobs on LinkedIn.
Yeah, look, there's always a lot of changes happening at LinkedIn. You may know already that it was started on the 5th of May 2003. I joined on the 21st of December 2003, and what it looked like then compared to what it looks like now is extremely different. And originally they just started off as a professional network for people, so just to connect people, and now they've moved more into a publishing platform. And I see these apps as all a bit of a segue into their third incarnation, which is going to be a B2B platform. So we can imagine all sorts of things happening in the future. One of them that I predict will happen is that because this is basically a huge database where the users update their details, I see it actually being something that a lot of companies will want to integrate with the database of LinkedIn, because at least that way it will be kept up to date, and any business knows that the value is in the database, but also the value in an accurate database where the details are regularly updated.
And I think people are always updating their LinkedIn profiles to keep it fresh and full of information about them. Because I think now we can say that LinkedIn is the first place for recruiters to look for candidates now.
It definitely is the first place to look for candidates, and you'll find that every recruiter subscribes to the LinkedIn Recruiter Service, which is about 10 grand a year. But that said, I don't believe that everybody updates their profile. Now, in the digital industry, there's probably a lot better currency and recency than in other industries. But for instance, I was talking to somebody this morning about oil and gas, and there's a whole bunch of people who just have never entered and are very hesitant participants in the platform. And there were some stats done a little while ago saying that over 50% of the people on LinkedIn earn more than 100 grand a year. But when you think about their biggest expanding markets going into China and students, I mean, a lot of those people, particularly the middle class, may not be earning that sort of money. So I think we'll see the platform change over time. But if you want to be found, you've got to update your details. You've got to be focused on your primary keywords and your secondary keywords, and you also need to be active on the platform, because the people who are active and are doing things, their certain activity is rewarded on LinkedIn. And also eventually it'll be a bit like the yellow pages, where the only good ads are the ones you pay for. And I predict also that as more people get online, the competition will be higher, and you'll almost be obligated, if you want to stay at the top of the tree, to be a premium member.
Yeah, it seems that this is coming on the way. Being a premium member will be like a must if you're looking for a job. But let me ask you a question here about updating the profiles again. Do you think that people in certain age brackets are updating more than others? Let's say people between 20 and 35 might be updating more than older than that?
Oh, look, I definitely think that a 20 to 35-year-old would probably have a lot more to add, because their level of education and the opportunities that they have available to them, quite often they're much more active participants in daily life and getting out and about. And I work with a lot of people over the age of 50, and they've already done all that sort of stuff, and they don't want to rehash that kind of information. And a typical Australian doesn't really want to showcase all of that, and they feel like typing it all up just looks ridiculous and it's too much, and so on and so forth. But then when I explain to them the concept of the computer experience versus the user experience, my profile is extremely long, and I reckon I could easily spend another 5 hours adding more content on there. And I do that because the content generates the inquiries, and I see LinkedIn as a pull strategy rather than a push strategy. So if we think about a digital professional, if I hear that Sam's fantastic, the first thing I'm going to do is go home and Google you and see what comes up. Now, in most cases, your LinkedIn profile is going to be the first item in search results, so people will click on that. And in fact, I created my own exact match domain name, sueelson.com, in 2012, and it took me 6 months to get that above my LinkedIn profile on Google search. So with that in mind, LinkedIn is likely to be something that's going to come up, or it could be somewhere where people search. And then when people do search and they look at that profile, does it tell them the story they want to hear? And if it doesn't tell them that story, then you can miss out on the deal, even if you've got the best referral from the best referrer. You still need to have that good quality data and information in there.
Yeah, that's good. That's great. And this takes me to the next question, which is about the keywords. We were talking about keywords even in LinkedIn profiles now.
I believe so, because I come from a background of creating websites and doing search engine optimization. I've got a presentation coming up here in Melbourne at the Melbourne SEO meetup next week, and I will be talking more about SEO techniques for LinkedIn there. But we need to remember that LinkedIn is basically a database with a whole bunch of algorithms, so it's exactly the same sort of thing as what Google is. And so for that reason, there are places where I believe your primary keywords should be to help you come up in search results, and where your secondary keywords should be to assist your profile opportunities. So for example, your primary keywords must be in your headline. That is the place where it needs to be. So don't just rely on it being your job title. That's where you really need to put the words you want to be found for. The second most important place is in your current job title. So although you might be a digital expert, you then would put dash social media, Twitter, LinkedIn, whatever it is that you're a specialist in, because those keywords in that job title are the second most important spot for your keywords. The third most important spot is your past job title, and then it goes down to sections like your education. So really fantastic for you to put a list of all your subjects in your courses, even if it's unrelated. And then in your summary section, so that's where you do a little bit of a bio. You can, and I'd really encourage people to use dot points rather than huge long sentences, because everybody just scrolls now, we don't read. And the final one is in the various experience sections. So when you talk about each job. So one of the ones that I like to talk about is the word training. So I started my training career in 1987, which is probably before a lot of the people on this call or who are listening to this were even born. But anyway, that's when I started training. And in 1982 was when I started that job. So by putting the word training in my job starting in 1982, it actually gives me 5 years more experience than what I've actually got, because that particular job went for 11 years and 3 months. So by putting that keyword throughout your profile, you automatically end up being known for having training experience for a long period of time, because that word training appeared right from the first job right through to all the others. So if you think about the keywords you want to optimize, even if there was only a very small component of that particular task in a previous job, if you include it in your experience section, then LinkedIn is going to say, well, this person has actually been training since 1982. They must know something about training. And I've actually found that a lot of people search for training and find me.
That's great. And I was talking to a recruiter a few days ago, and he told me that sometimes they start searching by putting a keyword in the search bar in LinkedIn,
Mm-hmm.
and they search for the people who has this skill.
Correct.
So
You've
we're
always
talking
got
about.
to, yep, absolutely, Sam. You've got to think about what the person who is looking for is going to type you in. And I'll give you another fantastic example of this. Last year I spoke at a conference in Adelaide, the Career Development Association of Australia conference, and all the people in the room help people with their careers. Now, when I think of somebody who can help me with my career, the only terminology I would think of would be a career counsellor or a career coach or something like that. So
Yeah.
I typed in Career Counsellor Adelaide into the LinkedIn search bar, and not one of those professionals came up in search results. Now you would think, considering that is their area of expertise and they're the types of clients they want, they would have that word in their profile. But the reality was that they called themselves in the profession career development practitioners. So that was the words, the
That's very
keywords that
far,
I
I guess, from what were people looking for.
correct, exactly. So if you know that somebody really needs, digital something or another, but they're still using the terminology social media, then if you don't have the word social media as one of your primary keywords, you're just not going to come up in search results. So now, of course, when I type in career counsellor in Adelaide, a whole bunch of them come up because they've now added that keyword to their profile. But you really have to sort of tune in and think, if somebody's looking for my skills, what words are they going to be searching for? And they're the words you have to include. And another example of this is when I first started doing websites. I've been online with websites since 2001. And what I did is I used to go to these seminars and they talk about usability and accessibility and design and so on. But now we talk about UX, user design, CX, customer experience, etc., etc. So there's all these new words that have come into that same area of specialty. So you actually need to include the old words, but if you were actually doing usability back in 2001, and now it's called UX, you would have to remember to write UX back in your job that you did in 2001 to show that you have more experience in that area.
That's really fantastic. I think a lot of people will be updating their profiles now with new ideas or new keywords, and they will have different way of thinking about their profiles now.
I hope
So
so, yeah.
yeah, thanks for that, Alison. Thanks for all these ideas and points. But now let's move to another area. You know now that there is a lot of social media and digital consultants and experts like you, and they are using LinkedIn for exposure, for more exposure, for people to know them more. They are not looking for jobs, but
Mm-hmm.
they are looking more for exposure, let's say.
Mm-hmm.
So how we can use LinkedIn as a platform to increase our exposure as consultants or experts or specialists?
Well, one of the great things that LinkedIn has introduced is posts, and I find these invaluable. Now, in the past, a lot of people participated in groups and also started following companies. And that's all good, but you tend to get lost in a news feed and at the bottom of some list somewhere. But by writing a post, what it does is it adds it to your profile. Obviously, you can be searched on that in the Pulse section of LinkedIn. So if you go under interests and you click Pulse, you can see lots of different stuff that you can track and follow, but you can also click discover, and that will make some recommendations on who you might like to be interested in. But also from the top menu bar here, you can do a search on posts. So if I was looking for somebody who did social media, Adelaide, on in the post section, it will in theory help me find some posts around that topic. So here we go, Ryan Holmes, etc., etc. So these are actual articles that I could find about that topic, and then I could obviously sort of look at those and say, well, this is somebody really useful who's written something on. Now, the average punter is not going to know to search Pulse to find articles. But if I hear about Sam and I think, well, is he any good or not, I'm going to look at his profile. So if you look at my profile as an example, and you scroll down, you can see that my 3 most current posts are written here. But if we click see more, what we will then see is this article that I wrote on March the 2nd has already had 345 views, 13 likes, 8 comments. This one down here, 1,242 views since October the 16th. Now, most of us, when we have our own blogs on our own websites, we don't get that kind of ratio of eyeballs. We're just not going to see that many people looking at us. So this really is good. Now, the other thing that happens is when you do a post, it will also show up in all of your contacts notifications, which is over here on the flag. So you can see here that Greg Paul has published a new post, Steve Barlow, etc., etc. So it gives you that little notification in the red flag to say that these people have published posts. But also it puts it in the news feed. Now, I've got 6,500 contacts now. Now, there is no way that I could keep up to date with my news feed. I mean, it would just be impossible.
It's difficult for sure.
to do that. But what I will do is I will check my notifications, and if something pops up here that I like, I'm much more likely to read it. So I feel that this post section is a really good way to profile and get yourself noticed. Now, what you can also do, depending on what your overall purpose is, if you're a social media expert in the field of education in schools or something like that, what you could choose is to join a group and look for one that, you know, was specialising in schools or something or another, and you could then sort of join that group and consider contributing to that group, you know, if that's your area of expertise. But again, the normal rules of social media apply, where 70% of the content you generate should be information, 20% sharing somebody else's, and 10% sales. And I find that particular behaviour a little bit too aggressive for the Australian market. And, you know, people would think, oh, you know, what's that social media person doing in here? They're not really an educator, blah, blah, blah. So it's not a particular technique that I like, but it is a particular technique that some people do. The other way to get exposure is obviously to connect to people related to your industry, because what's going to happen, I don't know whether you've noticed, Sam, since you've connected with me, but my face keeps popping up, you know, all over the place in your news feed because I'm connecting to new people, or I've published a post, or I've commented on something. So then there's that very subtle way of, just by being active on LinkedIn, it automatically lets connections know that you exist. And if your headline's really cool, then what it's going to do is it's going to remind people, oh yeah, there's Sue, that independent LinkedIn specialist, you know, popping up again. So for instance, here, Javira Asir is a senior account manager at Monster Southeast Asia. So that little, you know, reminder of what she does is going to pop up. So that's, again, why it's so important to have your primary keywords in your headline.
Oh, these are all great tips and ideas for LinkedIn, for social media and digital marketing experts who would like to have more exposure. Um, I think that LinkedIn posts is something booming now, and I can tell you that I can see a lot of the experts and specialists are posting. But I would like to ask you: is overposting is a good thing or a bad thing? Because sometimes I see people posting almost every day, and it's somehow not realistic that you can write an article or a blog on a daily basis.
I absolutely agree with you, Sam, and I call those people tryhards. And, you know, it looks like, well, why aren't you out there doing the real job instead of just writing posts on LinkedIn? And also what I find is the quality of their posts is absolute crap. And so I have one particular person I know, and he's posting probably once a week, and his views have increased to 1,500 over the last 90 days. So if you look at my profile, you'll see that, I'll just scroll down here to this stat. I've had 705 profile views in the last 90 days. And I actually suggest that if you want to be active on LinkedIn, you've got to have more than 100. And I can reverse stalk and see who's been looking at my profile as well. But what you need to think about is exactly the same as you would in any form of SEO or SEM, is conversions. And by posting all those times, how many conversions are they getting? And this person who's got 1,400 views in the last 90 days says nobody's contacting him for work. And I said, well, you know, you've got to include A, more calls to action, but B, I don't think that behaviour is well received. So if you look at my blog articles, I'm trying to write one roughly once a month. It's not exactly that, but if you look at the profile, and this one would be a good one for your you know, subscribers to look at, how to maximize your company profile on LinkedIn. So this is if they're working for one of their clients and their client has a company profile on LinkedIn. Here's what they could do. So it talks about completing it, including the keywords, inviting all of the staff to put their profile on, inviting key clients to follow the company profile, recording the stats. Now this is really good quality information and resource. But not only have I sort of written what I think you should do, but I've also linked into some more really good quality articles on the topic as well from reputable sources, mostly LinkedIn, which, you know, those articles were actually quite difficult to find on LinkedIn. And then I've included my call to action at the end. So if somebody really likes it, if you believe it's helpful, I've actually given them some instructions. But and I've also got some workshops coming up. You know, I'll probably take that off. I need to take that off shortly. But the sales message only comes at the end, but all the quality information they had prior to that means they're going to be much more interested in actually, you know, looking at that other content. And as you would know, I've got inbound links, outbound links, you know, I've got heading 1s, heading 2s, I've got little quotes, I've got dot points, you know, etc., etc. So even that content within the article, I've used a number of SEO techniques as well.
That's really interesting, and thanks for all these ideas. And I think the one thing that the main thing I'm coming out with this Hangout is think of your profile and posts as a search engine optimization friendly profile and posts.
Correct, correct. But also, you've got to remember that's the computer experience. You want to make the computer find you. But then when the user gets there, what is their experience going to be? Are they going to feel, after having read this article, that they're more well informed, that there was something useful there, you know? And if that's the case, then it's a good quality post. But if it's just a short rant and come along to my next workshop, you know, and it's 300 words, well, forget it. And there was another headline of a post that I saw the other day, and I loved the sound of it. It used the word listicles, and I really loved it because I thought that is so true. So many people just write posts, and it's just another list of the 10 best this or the 5 best that, or, you know, something or another else. And they said we've got to stop writing listicles. I must look it up because it really the headline really grabbed my attention, because in terms of engagement and sharing, you know, the articles that get shared are the ones that people really enjoy, and they're the ones that are funny, or they're really good advice, or they're a bit edgy or something like that. Whereas if you're just writing the boring, you know, why am I the best digital, you know, rep for your business, that's not a post. You know, that's not going to create engagement. And if I'm thinking about buying your services, I want to be inspired by what you've written, you know. And if you're just going to give me, you know, another sales pitch, as a typical Australian, I'm just going to move on to the next person who I see is a better fit for me. Because as recruiters, what we do is we think we are very logical about our decision making and our hiring process, but basically what we're trying to assess is, could I work with Sam or not? You know, and I heard this little dialogue on Facebook yesterday, and there's this guy in the I'm a Business Owner in Victoria Facebook group, which is quite a large group, and he's constantly banging on about how he hates WordPress and how you should use his proprietary software, blah, blah, blah. Well, one of the posts he wrote yesterday was, I've just lost one of my clients to a competitor, and they didn't even say goodbye, and now they're going to be screwed because of this, this, and this. Now, if you ask me, it didn't do him any favours whatsoever. It just looked like sour grapes, and it didn't look professional, and, you know, it wasn't authentic. And one thing I love about social media is it cuts through all the bullshit. You know, if you try and be something you're not, social media picks it up pretty quickly. And so I always work on the basis that everything I say has to be of value, and if it's not of value, I just won't publish.
That's great. That's another great outcome of the Hangout. And at the end, I would like to thank you, and just let me just give us your last tips for LinkedIn in 2015.
Right. Well, in terms of last tips, I would say complete your profile, but you must ultimately decide what your purpose is and stick to that. You need to think about primary and secondary keywords. And if you want to use LinkedIn to find work and you've seen a job that you've advertised on LinkedIn, what you can do is, we'll just do have we got time to do a quick example?
Yeah, sure, sure.
Digital creative, Adelaide. All right, so let's have a look. Are any of these jobs in Adelaide? All right, let's have a look at this one. Now, let's hope it's not. Oh, this one's apply on the company website, so we can't use that one. But if it was
This
a
is
job,
this is this will be one of the questions that I would like to ask you after we finish about applying on the company website versus applying on LinkedIn. But sorry
yeah,
for interrupting. Let's go.
unfortunately, we can't change. You know, we have to apply on the company website if that's what the employer has said. And the reason they do that is because they've got a database system that they have to use, and you know they want you to enter it all into that. So most of these are probably going to be apply on the company website. But anyway, if the job was not apply on the company website and it was apply through LinkedIn, what it enables you to do is attach one document or just hit the send button and send off your LinkedIn profile. Now, I am going to tell you straight up front, there is absolutely no point to sending off your LinkedIn profile because that has not tailored the application for the recruiter. So if I was applying for this job here at Accenture Interactive as a UI designer, what I would actually say is I would write a cover letter and I would say I am proficient in user-centric design methods and techniques. I've had experience using responsive design in such and such and such and such. I have a knowledge of emerging digital technologies, platforms and architecture, including X, Y, Z, A, B, C. I am a self-starter and able to work through ambiguity and a rapidly changing environment, having worked in multiple organisations from startup to corporate, you know, in the past, etc., etc. So the
It's
cover
like
letter,
answering the recruiter questions.
exactly, the exact content that is here in this job description must be in your cover letter. And if it's not in there, they're going to say this is not a match. So what you do is you have one document, which I call an application. And the first page is your cover letter. The remaining pages are your resume that has been tailored specifically for this job, highlighting the skills that are related to this particular job. This is not a 5-minute task. This is something, you know, even the best of us could probably take at least 10 or 15 minutes to do. But if your application document that you attach when you send it off goes through to the recruiter who's looking at that job, I've had 100% success in all of those people getting interviews when they tailor their application document to the job. So it's really, really important that they do that. Because basically, I have this fictional person I call Mary Smith, dumb recruiter, and Mary Smith is 22 with no life experience and can't read between the lines. So she's not going to know that, you know, this particular platform is equivalent to that particular platform. So you have to actually say, I've worked on this platform, and that platform, so that she knows you have the exact skills of what she's looking for. So if you don't tell the person, you can't sell your skills. So you have to be very, very specific and highlight those in your application. So whether you applied on the company website or whether you applied through LinkedIn, you have to include a resume and a cover letter that exactly matches whatever details they've given you about the position. And if you don't do that, you really are wasting your time. And anybody who says to me, oh, I've applied for 500 jobs and nobody ever gets back to me, well, I say, well, there's something wrong you're doing with your strategy. It's not something you're doing wrong with the application process. And you're doing that as well, but you know, you can't blame everybody else for your bad luck. You're not using the right strategies. And the other really interesting thing is now 90% of jobs are not even advertised. You know, 20 years ago it used to be 70% of jobs were not advertised, but now it's gone up to 90%. So having a good quality LinkedIn profile means that if I'm desperate and I want a digital creative and I go onto LinkedIn and I find somebody who suits, I'm just going to call you and get you in, you know, and that's what people are doing now. And so they don't want to write up a job ad. They don't want to handle 300 applicants. They don't want to sort through and ring everybody and, you know, check all these resumes. They just want to find what they're looking for and get the person over. So obviously they're going to use these sorts of
Yeah,
tools to do that.
lately I started to see recruiters posting jobs just like a status on LinkedIn or update on LinkedIn.
Correct? Yep.
So they are mainly targeting their network, their friends who are
Yes.
connected with them already.
That's right. And, you know, I spoke with a real estate agent recently, and they say, we just advertise on our Facebook page and we get all the applicants we need. So,
So
you
this
know,
is social recruiting now.
Correct. It
So
happens a
this
lot.
might be the topic for our next hangout for sure, and I'm really happy to have this hangout with you, Sue.
You're
Thanks for
welcome.
your time and all the valuable information you gave to us. And please promise us that you will be with us again in another hangout talking about maybe social recruiting.
Okay, well, make sure that you tell your viewers and listeners, whatever they are, to visit sueelson.com. So that's SUEELLSON.com. And if they click through the publications page, they'll see heaps of content that I've written that may be useful to them or their clients. And yeah, I can consider another hangout at some stage, sure.
Sure. Thank you, Sue, for your time, and thanks for our fans and audience. And please don't forget to visit SueEllison.com or Google Sue Ellison. You will find
Hmm.
her profile on LinkedIn and her website easily. And I'm sure that you will use her articles and publications um, to find your new job easily. Thanks, Sue. Thanks for that.
Thanks, Sam. Bye for now.
Bye. Bye.